This is Dateline News and Conversation. In this episode, I will present a sample of the massive annual war games in the Black Sea and all along Russia's borders, including the Arctic, where the United States and NATO are posturing against Russia. NATO should have been disbanded with the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 and the dissolution of the Warsaw Pact. Since then, it has not been a defensive organization, but an aggressive warmongering coalition. It all began with the not 1 inch promise made to Mikhail Gorbachev. The United States Secretary of State James Baker famously said, "Not 1 inch eastward," an assurance about NATO expansion in his meeting with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev on February 9th, 1990. It was part of a cascade of assurances about Soviet security given by Western leaders to Gorbachev and other Soviet officials. However, it was Bill Clinton, the first U.S. president, to betray that promise and began moving eastward, adding several former Soviet republics into NATO. Currently, there are 31 NATO countries. Since that time, the United States and NATO have been conducting annual war games designed to invade and attack Russia on land, at sea, in the air, and in space. And the United States has placed nuclear missiles and nuclear-capable bombers and fighter jets in Poland, Romania, Belgium, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Turkey, which can reach Moscow in 5 to 7 minutes. I will now present just a few recent examples of the ever-expanding and threatening games that are provoking Russia. How can these offensive operations be seen as anything but hostile and belligerent? If Russia and/or China were to stage war games in Mexico or in the Caribbean, the United States would go ballistic, making the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 look like child's play. First up, Operation Seabreeze 2023 from September 11th to the 15th in Constanta, Romania. This is a land and sea-based exercise with multinational allies and partners aimed to enhance the capabilities of Black Sea and Partnership for Peace maritime security forces while progressively training and preparing the Ukraine Maritime Command staff. The second part of Seabreeze 2023 was from September 5th to 6th. It was a fleet commanders conference focused on discussing the current maritime situation in the Black Sea, collective demining capabilities, and effective ways to enhance maritime security in the Black Sea. Participating nations included Bulgaria, France, Romania, Turkey, Ukraine, United Kingdom, and the United States. A new strategy for engagement with the Black Sea region is in the interests of the United States. I will summarize. The Black Sea is an active region for geostrategic competition among the US, Russia, and China, and it must become a high priority for the United States and NATO. Number two, the Black Sea Security Act, currently under consideration in the United States Senate, seeks to rectify the deficiencies in U.S. policy. Number three, Congress should raise the level of U.S. engagement with allies and bolster its economic military footprint in the Black Sea region. Now, the Black Sea is to Russia like San Diego and Hawaii would be to the United States in the Pacific. This is another outrageous provocation and a security threat for Russia that brings humanity one step closer to doomsday. Next up, Operation Air Defender 2023. Air Defender 2023 is bringing together 250 warplanes, including 190 fighter jets, 10,000 troops in drills designed to boost the alliance's preparedness and ability to protect against aircraft, drones, and missile attacks on cities and critical infrastructure. This, according to a NATO press release. Let me quote, "Though the German-led exercises have been in the works for several years, their timing as Moscow unleashes punishing air attacks on Ukrainian cities as part of the now 18-month invasion of its neighbor sends a timely message, especially to Russian President Vladimir Putin." End of quote. Quote, "Air Defender is necessary because we live in a more dangerous world. As we face the biggest security crisis in a generation, we stand united to keep our countries and our people safe," said NATO spokesperson Oana Lungescu. I would be pretty surprised if any world leader was not taking note of what this shows in terms of the spirit of the alliance, which means the strength of this alliance, and that includes Mr. Putin. This by United States Ambassador to Germany, Amy Gutmann. And, quote, "NATO territory is the red line, and we are willing to defend every inch of it," said Lieutenant General Ingo Gerhards, the chief of Germany's air forces. You bet Putin and other world leaders are taking note of this and all the rest of the empire's sanctions, bribes, coups, color revolutions, assassinations, and meddling all over the planet. Talk about provocations and acts of war. Next up, Operation Trident Juncture 2018. NATO launched its largest military exercise since the collapse of the Soviet Union, mustering tens of thousands of troops in what the head of the Western Alliance called a strong display of its capability, unity, and resolve at a time of growing danger in Europe. The main phase of the exercise, Trident Juncture, involves military forces from all 29 NATO countries, plus partners Finland and Sweden, and stretching from the North Atlantic to the Baltic Sea. It began in Norway on October 25th and was scheduled to run for 2 weeks. Trident Juncture sends a clear message to our nations and to any potential adversary. NATO does not seek confrontation, but we stand ready to defend all allies against any threat, said Jens Stoltenberg. Trident Juncture included around 65 ships, 250 aircraft, 10,000 vehicles, and 50,000 personnel. Next up, Operation Sabre Strike 2018. More than 18,000 troops from 19 nations, including the UK, took part in this US-led war games in countries bordering Russia. The American Army said the drills were a demonstration of the commitment and solidarity of NATO forces at a time of heightened tensions with Moscow. But it stressed the exercises carried out in the days before the World Cup began in Russia were not a provocation. It's the 8th year the Sabre Strike exercises have taken place. Next up, Operation Cold Response in the Arctic 2022. Troops from 27 countries wrapped up one of the largest NATO war games since the 1980s in the Arctic. Russia's war in Ukraine gave the exercise a Cold War feel. At the same time that NATO practiced in the Arctic, the US ran a similar exercise with 8,000 troops in Alaska along the Bering Sea. Ever since the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the rise of the Russian Federation, Russia has never threatened any country in Europe, the Czech Republic, Croatia, Serbia, Hungary, Poland, or the Baltic countries, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. But when Russia conducts its own military exercises within its own borders and in response to the US NATO war games, it is construed as Russia being aggressive. Currently winding down, September 2023, the US Armenian war games. Armenia and Russia have a joint security agreement, and Russia has peacekeeping forces in Armenia. But the current government in Armenia, heavily influenced by the United States, is turning away from Russia, its natural and longtime ally, and is conducting military exercises with 85 members of the United States Army Airborne Troops. The collective defense exercises, Steadfast Defender, will take place in Germany, Poland, and the 3 Baltic states that border Russia, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. The U.S. bloc says it needs to do much more to protect itself against current threats, but also against reconstituted threats and potential future threats. Threats from whom? Talking about threats and acts of aggression, let's compare Russia and the United States. I go back just to 1945 and America's wars and acts of aggression, but only to the year 2000 when Vladimir Putin became president of Russia. The reason for this is because modern-day Russia is not the Soviet Union or communism in any way, shape, or form. Since 1945, there have been 248 armed conflicts in 153 regions of the world. 201 were initiated by the United States. NATO's military power is used to maintain Western hegemony, economic enslavement, and political pressure on states that pose no military threat to the alliance. Members of this bloc have taken part in more than 200 conflicts across the world over the past 7 decades. Here's a partial sample. 1950 to 1953, the Korean War. More than 3 million civilians were killed, 3 million refugees. The United States also used germ warfare there. Vietnam, 1955 to 1975, 2 million civilian deaths, 3 million displaced. The Kosovo War in 1999, led by the US, there were more than 2,000 killed, over 6,000 injured, nearly 1 million refugees. They used cluster bombs and depleted uranium. The Afghanistan War, the year 2001 to 2021, 176,000 civilians killed, creating 10 million refugees. The United States targeted and killed civilians, including children. The Iraq War, 2003, based on lies, 250,000 civilian deaths, 16,000 killed directly by U.S. forces. The U.S. used depleted uranium and 25 million mines. The Syrian War, 2014, by a U.S.-led coalition. The U.S. occupied oil fields and stole oil from Syria. It left 350,000 Syrian dead, displaced more than 12 million people, and left 14 million in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. In addition to waging wars, the U.S. also intervened in other countries' internal affairs by supporting proxy wars, providing weapons and ammunition, training anti-government forces, committing extrajudicial assassinations, and orchestrated coups. In total, since World War II, the United States military has killed more than 21 million civilians in victim nations. Since Putin became president in the year 2000, Russia has had the following wars. The Chechen War, 1999 to 2009, a war Russia fought against insurgents in the North Caucasus. The Russian-Georgian War, 2008, to protect the separatist republics of North Ossetia and Abkhazia that were loyal to Russia. 2015 to 2022, Russia, at the invitation of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, entered the country to defend Assad and the government. Unlike the United States and Turkey, who were not invited and illegally invaded a sovereign nation. 2014 to 2023, the war in Ukraine. Russia did not invade. It was provoked out of self-defense. NATO would have taken Ukraine, made it a NATO country, and been an immediate threat to Russia's security. So that's it. Also compare America's war spending compared to the rest of the world. The United States spends more on defense than the next 10 countries combined. Considering that NASA is both a civilian and military organization, some 21 national security agencies, the NSA, Homeland Security, and other agencies, the U.S. annual war budget is over $1 trillion a year. That's trillion with a T. Russia, on the other hand, spends the equivalent of only United States $84 billion a year. This very brief summary makes it absolutely clear that the United States of America, not Russia, is and has been the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. Martin Luther King said that.